Hello. Hello, can you hear me, Alan?
Yeah, I can. Can you see me? Just a
Oh,
sec. Let me turn on my lights here.
yeah, you're totally there. That makes a difference. You'll silhouette it there for a
Yeah,
while.
I know that.
So we're having a bunch of people join in all of a sudden. That's good. Let me put this up in a different way of viewing everybody. There we go. Uh, how are you guys all doing?
Good. Yeah, it's very good.
Uh, I just had one person write to me that had been on the calls most every week, but I thought you'd want to know, will not join us today because of just stressed out dealing with everything that's been happening in Minneapolis. And that's Michael Alexander. He's the African-American photographer who works for the Archdiocese. And it's just impacted him in such a way, he's just having a hard time functioning right now, he said. So he wasn't going to be joining us, but I thought you guys want to pray for Michael, just to let you guys know that other things are affecting us around the world, I guess. So what I'm going to do is put up here in our notes in the chat area, just so you guys can have that, kind of a schedule, and let you know if James Dockery or Jeff will join us today. I think James is going to try to, but today's his birthday, and Jeff Raymond's birthday is tomorrow. Oh, there's everybody joining in slowly. So one thing, just a side note that I noticed in trying to explain this to somebody, what we're doing, you know how you kind of go to meetings, workshops all the time, and then you go to lunch or you have a break and you go to a round table and you're sitting with everybody? To me, this is kind of what the Zoom meeting is. It's more of that time breakout, you're in between, and you grab lunch with a bunch of friends and some people you've never met before, and then you kind of go, what do you do? And we did this a lot around some workshops I've been participating in through the past 30 or so years. So kind of in that vein, to start us off, I'd like each person, I'll just call your name out, but to give us your full name, where you are, what type of work you do, and if you're retired, let us know what you did as well in the past. Oh, James, there he is, birthday boy.
Hey,
He just
yeah,
joined us.
sorry. I was on a call to Israel and so just got up. Been a busy
Well,
morning.
happy birthday.
Good to see you. Thank you. I'm 39 again.
So what we'll do is we'll
wish.
go around, and as people join in, I'll just call on them, but we'll take the first good 15 minutes just to be sure we get it to know who's in the room with us. So starting with John Walton, who's never been with us before. Tell us a little about yourself, your location and what you're doing, and if you're retired, let us know what you did.
Retreaded, whatever. Thanks, Stanley. Yeah, John, I'm here in Arlington, Texas. I worked 20 years with Phil Wallace with Awana as a video producer, and before that, worked with up in Allen's neighborhood with Wycliffe in the Philippines for a long time. So right now I work with Lifeline Global. It's a prison ministry. We do a lot of work with incarcerated moms and dads, and I do some of the photography. When we meet, we have 400 or 500 kids come and spend the day with their incarcerated dads at Angola prison. So that's been a great opportunity as well. So not quite retired, maybe in a year or two, who knows? But that's what we're doing. So do a lot of the social media and website stuff as well.
Cool. Gary, you're up. Gary Chapman.
Hey, I'm Gary Chapman from Atlanta, Georgia, and I primarily shoot for nonprofits and some commercial. Most of that is overseas, so I'm not going anywhere right now, obviously.
Gibbs.
Hey, I'm Gibbs Frazier. I'm from Alpharetta, Georgia. My background is in the newspaper business, and later on I transitioned to being the director of photography for Southern Baptist Home Mission Agency. Currently, I'm running up against that retirement thing myself. I'm kind of semi-retired, but I'll do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, little missions, a little of that, but really locked down right now, just like the rest of us.
Cool. Let's see. Billy Weeks, just give us a date on.
Hi, I'm Billy. Billy Weeks from Ringo, Georgia, up near Chattanooga, Tennessee. Do a little teaching at University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, and do a lot of I guess, more editorial type or NGO type work. Quite a bit of it's international. So yeah, that's me.
Bill Bangham.
Hey, Bill Bangham, Short Pump, Virginia, and retired from the Southern Baptist International Mission Board, where I was editor of their magazine, and doing some personal project teaching and speaking, and just actually more hanging out with my dog right now than anything.
Just waiting for Stanley to click me in.
Okay, Alan, your first time joining us. Tell us about yourself and where you work and all.
Well, I work in Calgary, Alberta, and I've been with Wycliffe for 33 years. For the last 16 years, I've been their photographer, main photographer,
Yes,
and now I'm the photo services manager. So I look after their library, especially during this COVID time. So I'm partially retired. In one sense, I only work 3 days a week, but I'm locked down too for my next assignments. We're looking what we're going to do overseas, and right now we're just doing a lot of planning, which is all on hold until we get access. So things like that.
Cool. Alan Kinsley, am I saying that right? Go ahead and catch us up.
That's right. Hi, I'm Alan Kinsley. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia as well. My background is in TV. I was in TV for almost 10 years down in Savannah and also in Atlanta. And now I'm the video producer. Multimedia specialist is my official title, but I call myself a video producer for the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Atlanta. And some of y'all may know Michael Alexander. I work with him. He's a photographer for the Catholic newspaper. His office is on the other side of my building. So yeah, that's my background. I've been working nonstop during this time because we're doing a lot of live streaming masses and a lot of videos coming from our bishops, and I'm in charge of all that. So I've been working nonstop for that. But Michael sent me the link to this and told me it was a good group to check out. So here I am.
Thanks for joining us. Michael Hutchison, tell us about yourself.
Hi guys, Michael Hutchinson. You can check out my profile at mikehutch.com. I was introduced to the group. I'm a fundraising writer and a marketer / storyteller. I was introduced to the group, because I'm connected with a lot of photographers like yourself. So thanks so much for allowing me to be a part of this group. For 15 years in my career, Food for the Poor is an NGO I used to be on staff with. So I traveled with photographers like yourself to the poorest parts of the Caribbean, Latin America, Haiti, Guatemala, El Salvador, etc. And in my career, I just know the power of imagery that you guys produce. So again, I'm pleasure to be connected with storytellers like yourself.
Mark Johnson. You're muted.
There we go. How's that?
That's better.
All right. Well, I'm really thinking about retiring. I don't have my contract for next year. So I think maybe it's time to get into like gentleman farming or something like that. I've been watching a lot of tractor videos on YouTube this week, and I'm not entirely sure why. But if I do sign my contract, I teach out at the University of Georgia at the Grady College, run the photojournalism program, chief technology officer for the program, and the technical administrator, director, or programmer for NPPA's Best Photojournalism competition.
Oh, thanks. Ken Touchton, I muted you because your noise there. So if you'll unmute yourself and go ahead and introduce yourself. Ken Touchton, can you hear me? Let me see if I can do that for you. Do you see the unmute down there?
Yes.
There you go. Go ahead and tell us about yourself and where you are and what you did or doing and all that.
Okay, Ken Touchton. I'm in Northern Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C. And I'll tell you, Stanley, it's difficult to get in to these Zoom meetings because my wife says I have to get out of my easy chair, put my book down, go shave, take a shower, and put on a clean shirt. So I'm going, wait a minute. But anyway, I just retired, but like everyone else, locked in and doing a lot of reading and cleaning up digital files and negative files and going through the process of downsizing. So that's what I'm about these days.
Phil Wallace.
Yeah, so I'm up in Chicagoland. Work for an organization called Awana. I am the director of studios and visual storyteller for our solutions team and studios in general, which include video, podcast, audio, and photo.
Cool. Let's see. James Dockery. Just to
And go back and click again.
Hey,
Okay.
James Dockery from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I work at ESPN here. Been there 10 years as a video editor, and I like to train a lot. So I train the other editors on Premiere. We use a proprietary edit system called Quantel. So I've made myself valuable by teaching the others Premiere during this time of quarantine. We have to use Premiere, and we've been editing social media for the SEC network. And just got off the phone with Bristol, so I'm even teaching Bristol people now. Got 6,000 employees up there, and we only have 200 employees here in Charlotte. So always enjoy working with Stanley and talking and seeing what you guys are doing. Exciting.
Cool. Let's see. I'm trying to see who I'm missing here. Oh, good. The very first person to kind of lead us off for today is Allison. She's the one lady with all these white old men. Sorry about that, Allison. We're going to have to get Hannah to join us and some, maybe Liz and some others.
Yeah.
So why don't you go ahead and share your screen and tell us all that you do and all.
Okay.
Or have done.
Yeah, I'm Allison Basie, and I'm currently in Columbus, Ohio. I worked for ABWE as a short-term missionary doing media missions in South America. So I first got involved with ABWE about 5 years ago through their Storytellers Abroad program, which James mentioned last week. So and I've been on 4 different trips with them, hopefully more in the future. But yeah, I spent last year in Peru, Chile, and Colombia, just capturing media for missionaries down there and for their ministries. So I thought what I'd do today is just share some of the pictures from my time in Iquitos in the Amazon jungle, and then also share one video from Chiclayo, Peru. Stanley, it says screen sharing's disabled.
Sorry. I'll turn it on. Sorry. Is it working now?
Yep. Thank you. All right, can you see it okay?
Yes.
All right. So these are all from around the city of Iquitos, Peru, which is an isolated city in the Amazon jungle. So I was able to go on a boat ride, and so a lot of these pictures are from a boat. These are some local fishermen going to the gas station. There's some more fishermen checking their nets. So, and bringing their plantains up to the market. Iquitos has been hit pretty hard by this whole COVID situation since they are an isolated city, and a lot of the markets have shut down. And that was a lot of the people there, that was their source of income, but that was also where they shopped for a lot of their daily food. So here's some other local food. I did not eat the grubs. Just doing laundry on the river. If you're not familiar with the Amazon, the river rises and falls like 40 feet every year. And so houses will either usually be built on stilts or have logs underneath, so they float when the river rises. And somehow, even though there's whole communities that like go underwater, they still have electricity to those communities. You can see the light bulb hanging there. So there's whole communities that have roads. Some of them have nice concrete roads, but then when the river rises, they're only accessible by boat. So logging is a big industry of the Amazon, and so in this town, they dumped a lot of their sawdust to make the roads there, so the roads are very like springy. And also, if you're familiar with Duck Dynasty, the Robinsons come to this neighborhood to do ministry. Here's a church. You can see the front door isn't accessible because the river's low, but there's steps leading up to the front door for when the river's high. You can take your boat right up to it. All right, and let me just, so this is, I'm just going to share one of the videos that I made from Chiclayo, Peru. So if you go like straight west from the Amazon, it's a coastal city in the desert. So let me just make sure got sound here. Okay. Let me know if you can't hear it.
Yo era una persona infiel, no tenía reparo para eso. Mi vida matrimonial era muy mala. Entonces conocí a David y empecé a conectarme con él. Me dijo, hay una sola manera de salvar tu matrimonio. Y me acuerdo mucho que él se inclinó, jaló su cajón, sacó su Biblia y me dijo, solamente con esto. Empezamos a ir a la iglesia y yo tomo ya la decisión de volverme cristiano. Con la pareja con la que yo fui infiel, yo le dije que ya no iba a estar más. Y recuerdo que yo me sentía tan bien. Y yo recibo una llamada, la llamada de la chica, ¿no? A las semanas o 2 semanas que yo había ya cortado definitivamente, a decirme de que estaba embarazada. Y han pasado seguramente unas semanas o meses, y yo a escondidas veía a la criatura. Entonces, y en esas vistas con la criatura, yo vuelvo a caer con la mujer. David, el que ahora es mi pastor, y me pregunta, ¿cómo vas? Y yo ya sabía lo que había pasado y no quería hablar, Y me dijo, ¿qué pasa? Y le cuento. Y David, ahí frente a mí, llora. Y yo me quedé en mi cuarto, en el suelo. Lloré mucho. Sabía que había perdido un matrimonio. A los 3 días, 2 o 3 días, conversé con mi esposa. Y me perdonó. Agradezco mucho a la iglesia a la que pertenezco. Sin la iglesia Vida Nueva en mi camino, francamente, mi matrimonio ya no estaría. Y yo quería renovar mis votos con mi esposa. Y hacerlo en el año número 19 no era una fecha muy redonda, muy bonita. Y ya llevo ahora un aro encima de mi aro matrimonial, de mis 19 años de matrimonio, el cual no me lo saco. Y estoy feliz.
Yeah, so that's a sample of some of the work I did. Yeah, in all of South America, just about. So,
Yo era una persona.
So, yeah, does anyone have any questions?
I have a question, Allison. Can you hear me fine?
Yep.
Yeah. So how was the transition coming back? Because you were down there for a while. Tell us a little bit of what that was like. Just get back to what you might call normal life. I mean, you were doing a lot of traveling, shooting. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I don't know if there is a normal yet with all this COVID thing. Yeah. There are just random little things that kind of hit me with a reverse culture shock. So I think the first one, because I spent 10 months living out of 2 suitcases. So the first thing that hit me when I got back was I have so much stuff like here in my house. Like I don't even know where to unpack my stuff. And then I think there were just other random little things like theft is really big in South America. And so I'd be out somewhere and someone would accidentally bump into me and I'd immediately check my pockets to make sure I still have everything. And so there's just little things like that, but most of all, it's been pretty good.
I've got a question for you, Allison.
Okay.
You know, this is gender related. Obviously, your video, and I really enjoyed that, was about a man's fall and succumbing to temptation. And here he was telling his story to a female. And I wanted to know, you know, what that was like. You know, you're surrounded by guys right now, and you know, we've probably heard other stories of guys' unfaithfulness, but you know, can you kind of walk us through what that was like for you? Because here's a guy just being extremely vulnerable, quite frankly. you know, I can't tell your story, but I mean, it seems to me like that would be just scary territory for a complete stranger to share with a, you know, somebody of the opposite gender, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I wasn't the only one in the room. So his wife was also in the room, and then also one of ABWE's missionaries who had helped him walk through that whole situation. And so they were both fully aware of his whole story. And so, and he had been fully comfortable sharing his story to the missionaries before. So he was pretty open to sharing. So there wasn't, and ABWE just in general in the field has good guidelines about boundaries between the genders. And so there wasn't really any issues there.
Sure. And my question really wasn't addressing propriety so much as, you know, getting the story to come out and, you know, how comfortable he was. And you've obviously shared that with us.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I just had a question. Do you speak Spanish? And if not, how do you work that into your production workflow and dealing with another language?
Yeah, so Ivan was like very comfortable sharing his story, and so at the beginning of the trip, I knew some Spanish, and I learned quickly a few phrases to help direct people. So like to tell people where to look, or things to slow down, or just the generic things you tell people at the beginning of an interview, like where to look, like be careful about moving too much. So I learned like those key phrases in Spanish to begin with. I also, most of the time I had a missionary with me that could help translate if I got completely lost. But I also, in almost all the cases, worked with the missionary via email before I would get there to say, what is the story? So I kind of understood where it was going beforehand, and then I would have time to write out potential questions for the interview and translate them ahead of time in case I needed them. And then I would say in most cases, people were pretty open to sharing, and I didn't have to go into those questions. I would just, but having it be a second language, sometimes it's hard to man the camera and the audio and process in a second language to see if they gave all the answers I wanted. So sometimes I would check with the missionary before I wrapped up the interview, or whoever was sitting with me, to say, okay, did they cover this and this and this aspects of their story that I made sure I wanted to grab.
It's good seeing you again, Allison.
Yeah,
Hey,
thanks, you too.
Yeah. What's next for you?
I don't know. So, yeah, I'm looking for a job. So, just wherever God leads.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't know if you had any plans on, I know COVID has changed this entire situation. I mean, everything I planned to do is canceled for this year. You know, it's all a blank slate now. And I just wondered if you thought anything about going with back with ABWE or going with them full time or something like that.
Yeah, we haven't talked about full time, but we've definitely talked with Jeff Raymond about continuing to be involved with the Storytellers Abroad program. But yeah, we'll see where God leads.
I've got a quick question. Just you said you were down there for 10 months. Like, did you know you were going down there for 10 months? Did you have like a couple of stories that you knew you were doing, or was it just kind of like finding the stories and staying as, you know, as they kind of came about?
Yeah, the 10 months was planned. It was kind of how much could I fit in that 10 months without being too overwhelmed. And so we kind of knew the locations of all the missionaries where I wanted to visit. And then we just tried to make sure, I would try to work with the missionaries ahead of time to make sure they actually had a story for me to tell before I'd go there. And then managing their expectations. Like Chiclayo, the city I went, that Yvonne's story, the missionaries were like, you can do 5 videos for us in 10 days, right? And I'm like, no. So yeah, it's just managing the expectations. And so I just kind of divided my time devoted to specific ministries or missionaries to try to capture each story.
Did you try to finish and produce your material in the field? So you were actually filming it, doing it, and then actually leaving with a piece done? Or did you do that in a later date? How did you manage that, the post-production work?
Yeah, most of it happened at a later date. I guess that was another thing that I kind of took for granted, was how much time it takes to adjust to a culture, different culture, and just how like mentally tired it can be to like think in another language and work in another language. So a lot of the post-processing happened later. That was just something I was upfront with the missionaries about.
I've got a 2-part question for you. How many of the stories were you sourcing yourself, and who's the audience for these? Who are you trying to connect with?
Yeah, so for the audience, that was a wide variety. So I did, well, for example, like the story I just shown, I did a version that was just Spanish with a different ending title for David the pastor. He's a missionary supported by people in Lima, Peru, the churches in Lima there. So I did a Spanish version with a different ending slide for him to take to his supporters. So the same video, just small differences. So in a lot of the videos I ended up having small tweaks like that. So a Spanish version for in-country audiences. For some of them, like there's prenatal center. So there was one that was a little bit more subdued in the Christianity that was to be used for like marketing, just to bring awareness that the ministry exists, so more girls can come to that ministry. But yeah, so most videos had at least 2 versions, a Spanish version and an English version, so people could use for either their supporters, or ABWE could use for recruiting as well. And then as far as sourcing the stories, I would kind of give the missionaries a guideline to say, what does your ministry need, and what's the end goal of what you want for these, for a video, and then is there someone that can help? Is there like a story that can help get you there? And so most of the missionaries were pretty good about finding the stories themselves, and then I would help them work through that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Allison. I think you did an excellent job. It's amazing when you consider, when did you first start this? How long ago? Because the group may not know when you started your storytelling and how long you've been doing this.
Yeah, it was 5 years ago that I went on my first Storytellers Abroad trip with Stanley and James. And so that was where I first got my video training.
And what were you doing before that?
So I worked for Nationwide Insurance for about 10 years. I was always interested in photography, but I hadn't had that much experience in videography until then.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. We're going to move on to Alan so we can get as much time to him as well. So Alan, kind of kick us off and tell us all about your work and what you're doing.
Well, I've been working with Wycliffe now for, I guess it's been 33 years or something. So I started in Papua New Guinea. I was there for 16 years working in building work. Photography became a hobby that developed into a career. And just because Papua New Guinea is very, very unique. And as a result, I was invited to join Wycliffe Canada's staff as a photographer. So it's been a growing experience for me. So started, of course, shooting in film, and I've moved to digital realm. And I'm still a little bit not very strong on the video side of things. But I thought what I'd do is share with you today just a little bit of some of the photos I've taken on the 25 countries I've been to. I'm not going to, of course, share all that, just a few places, and tell you a few stories about people I've met and the imagery that I've used for that. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. So maybe I could just share those stories and tell you a little bit more about Bible translation, because it's in an amazing, amazing place right now. So let me see if I can share my screen here. Okay. Let's see. I want it. Okay. I'm screen sharing. It don't seem to, man. I don't know. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, anyways, just to start, if you look at this little graph, it's not the best. It's just something I picked up, but it shows the story of Bible translation. If you look at the bottom in 1385, there was hardly any portions of the scriptures. And as you look along to the right, you'll see that some of the impact, the Reformation in 1500 and moving forward towards William Carey, the father of Protestant missions in 1800, there's still only about 250 portions of scriptures in the world. And if you move forward to that, to Wycliffe Bible Translators founder, that's in 1934 to 42 is when Wycliffe Bible Translators was started. And even then, we're looking at only about 1,000 portions of scriptures in the world. And if you move forward to about 1999, Wycliffe decided that they would project how long it would take to get a Bible translator in every language that needed it. And it was determined that it would probably take us to about 2150 to get a Bible translator in every language that needs it. So we changed and restructured and did some work. And so that was started in 1999. Here we are in 2020. And it looks like that we could probably have a Bible translator in every language that needs it by 2038, somewhere around there. So it's amazing. But if you actually look at the stats, there's 1 in 5 people are the only ones that are waiting for the Bible. So about 80% of the world has the scriptures. There's 7,353 languages in the world that are spoken in the world. And there's about 698 Bibles, full Bibles. And the amazing statistic is that every 2 weeks, a Bible is translated into either the New Testament is dedicated or a full Bible is complete. So we are living in amazing times in the terms of the number of languages that are getting access to the scriptures. So you can look at some of these things. They're updated every year, so we can see how much that's changing. And so the other thing that's amazing is that we also have access to the scriptures in many, many different ways through the Bible. On the Bible.com, there's over 11,000 languages. The Jesus film's in over 1,500 languages. So we're seeing this mass acceleration of the access to the scriptures that we've never, ever seen before. And so again, you can just go to now, even if you're sharing, you can go to a Bible app, the Holy Bible, and access it now. So these are amazing tools that God has been using to help accelerate the Bible. And also a number of things have changed in the way we changed our methodologies to accelerate the work of Bible translation. So when I started, my very first trip was to Chad. And so I was really new to this. I had never actually done a trip to Africa. And I went there to see a lady by the name of Jackie Heino, who was a translator there. And you know, I was just impacted with seeing the different relationships she had with the people. And one of the things we went there to do was to cover a bit about a story about AIDS, because, you know, you have to answer the question of indifference towards, so what, you translate the Bible, what difference does it really make? You know, it's good to have a book, but what does it do? So we were covering a story about the use of the Bible and the scriptures to help people with education about AIDS. It's the same thing as like the COVID-19 response we're finding today. That's actually very similar, that we're helping to translate materials into the local languages so that people have access to good health materials and that people can grow. And I always remember too being impacted by a woman, like a woman saying, like, when we used to speak before the scriptures came, the men used to always just say, well, that's women's talk. But now that we're speaking the word of God, the men have to listen. And that really impacted me, because I realized that the Bible gives us equal voice to all people. And this was the first time I've ever actually seen anything of that nature and heard about it. And of course, the whole issue of education is a huge issue. And in the schools, teaching people how to do literacy, how to do reading and writing, and the impact of people not being ripped off in the markets because they couldn't add and subtract, such simple things that we take for granted. So at the time I was there was also a famine in this area. People were having to leave the area. And of course, Bible translation is not just about putting a book in people's hands, but it was really about actually impacting them well by showing the love of Christ, by bringing food. And that's what they had. They also had set up a grinding mill so that the people could grind their maize and stuff and actually generate income for the translation programs. This is in DRC. This is in Goma. And most of us have heard of that, of course, because DRC has got lots of issues. And when we were there, this is actually Nyiragongo. It's a huge crater. It's an active volcano, one of the largest in the world. If you look on the streets, you can see where they had a eruption, and all the lava actually end up on the streets. And we went there also to do a story on trauma healing workshops. And I'll tell you, when we arrived there, we met people like this young girl who was basically abused and thrown down a well. And because of that, she was crippled. And we just seen the amount of violence in that place. We met people like this young girl who's part of a family, and her father was abducted as a child soldier. And we did a story about faces of trauma out of that from people that we had met. And I think these young guys also were used as child soldiers and abducted for a period of time until they were able to escape. But you know, the scriptures have had a huge impact, because we found that people in those countries a lot of times don't always express their emotions. And one of the things they would say is, praise the Lord, you know, and this happened to my family. And they were trying to show faith. Meanwhile, they were actually suffering inside. And so this book about trauma healing, which is a mental health book, has been translated. It's actually gone viral, being used in many, many countries to help people deal with the issues of war, using the scriptures and helping people use like the Psalms, and bringing people to the cross, about learning how to forgive the unforgivable, things that I can personally say I've never experienced or had to deal with. And it's been an amazing experience seeing God work in these ways. This is Caliste and Francisca. And Francisca, she lost 3 children to malaria within 1 week. And it was devastating for her. She was talking about how that the church basically was saying, well, you don't have enough faith, and you're not you know, putting on a brave enough face to trust God in all this. But she was so devastated, she laid on the floor in her house and could not do anything functional until her husband actually found out about this program and used it. So we did a story about her. She works now presently as a nurse. She's a nurse in the hospital, and her husband continues on as a pastor, ministering to people. This is actually a photo of the Sinti Gypsy camps, the Roma. And one of my first stories I did too was about the Roma. And this is a man by the name of Rudy. And Rudy was an alcoholic and a drunkard, and was about to lose his marriage. He was addicted to gambling. And his story was, he basically got so desperate, he cried out to Christ. And God literally delivered him of his addictions. And it was so profound that Rudy now works with Armin, who is a Bible translator. Actually, the Roma New Testament is actually complete now. And but the amazing thing here is that this is in Germany, and Armin's German, and Rudy is a Sinti Gypsy. And if you know the history of what happened during Hitler's time with the extermination of Gypsies between the Germans and the Gypsy people, it's again these things you see that God does. He puts people together, working together in collaboration around God's kingdom to bring about Bible translation. And I'm always I always see these remarkable connections. Or this guy, this is Rilo. Rilo actually was one of the first Bible translators for the Roma. And he learned reading by reading comic books. And so just because he had no education, he would pick up comic books and start to learn to read. And he was the one who first started to hand pen the New Testament. And they used that as some of the rough draft for that New Testament. And I remember going to church with them and just seeing them worship. And I remember I'm just a new in my role, and seeing tears roll down people's faces. And I just realized that God's at work in all these people that I don't even know their language. I don't understand them. I can't pretend to be an expert on them, but God's doing his work in the heart of his people. And so it helped me broaden my understanding of the nature of God, the nature of his kingdom, the nature of the people that he's worked within. And this is in Timor. This is in Indonesia. This is Gabe, and Gabe is a thief. He actually stole a Bible when he was staying as a young man in a person's house. And because he saw how they prayed at the dining table, and it was so intimate and so close and so particular that it struck his heart. And he decided he wanted the Bible, but he was afraid to ask for one, so he stole it. And as a result, he actually is a pastor, and he's working on the Tetun translation of the scriptures. And this is Chuck and Barbara Grimes, who are on the left. They are Bible translators with Wycliffe, and they were working on 20 languages at the same time. They both have PhDs in linguistics, and we're checking a lot of these languages in that part of the world. And so we always think of Indonesia as being completely Muslim, but there's lots of work there in this part of the world, especially a strong witness for Christ. And I've just always amazingly enough, doing these cluster languages working together has accelerated the pace of Bible translation. So here's some of the books that they did in the Tetun language. You know, and sometimes you wonder about people's hunger for scriptures, and here we are just standing there, and they were just giving out these portions of the scriptures in Tetun, and the kids literally mobbing this woman to get their copy and going off to read them right away. So it encourages me to know that there's real hunger for the scriptures out there. And of course, at this time, they were just starting to use a bit more of cell phones and being able to actually put the New Testament onto a cell phone. And of course, that's now become so common. This is what we call the Silk Road area in SRA. And, whoops, sorry. So, sometimes we think there's places in the world where nobody's working. God's not working. He's forgot about it. He's never been there. This was one of my most interesting assignments. I actually felt like God literally carried me there and carried me through that. I actually broke my foot while shooting this thing after about a week there. And I shot the last 2 weeks with a broken ankle and on crutches. But this is a nomadic people. They're called the shepherd people. And they move around from camp to camp. And sometimes you find that on these assignments, like, for example, I prayed very significantly that God would give us opportunity to be able to be in some of these camps and meet up with some of these people as they moved out of the highlands down to the lower areas. And we were blessed to be able to actually do that and have this access, though we were out hunting for them around the various areas. And,
we got about a minute or two here.
Okay, well, I'll speed it
if
up
you want to
here.
watch the time.
Okay, thanks. And anyways, this is a guy who, they have their animals and sheep. But the way they've been successful here is being able to do working with local people in their families and in their communities. And so I'll just finish with this one. But yeah, some of the photos I took. Yeah, this one was one of my favorites. I was able to do it with flashlight and with just the fire and being able to actually stay overnight with this family. Okay, I guess we can stop there.
Anybody got questions for Alan?
Well, Alan, I just want to say, you know, I was in Wycliffe for 20 years in the Philippines, and seeing those images just kind of warms my heart for the Ministry of Bible Translation. I would just say, if you ever get a chance to photograph a New Testament dedication, I did 7 of them during my time in the Philippines, and it's just a blessing to tell that story of people receiving the Word of God for the first time in their language. It's just, so thanks for that.
Thanks, John.
I would just add, Alan, I don't know if you knew why we're in Texas, but my wife works for the Seed Company, which is an affiliate of Wycliffe. So we're still involved in it.
Oh, fantastic.
I don't necessarily have a question, more of a comment. I would say it's awesome work what you do, and your story and what you're telling me really reminds me. It's kind of random, but there's a Broadway show called Come From Away, which is the story of Gander, Newfoundland, where all the planes came on 9/11 to land, and all these people from all over the world. And there's a scene in the play about the people taking them to the home, and these people didn't know what was going on. They didn't speak the language, but they had a Bible. And so the Canadian knew a Bible verse, and I actually pulled it up. It's Philippians 4:6, be anxious for nothing. And even though he couldn't speak their language, he knew to find it in the Bible and point to that, and they were able to read it. And I just, hearing your story and remembering that scene just is awesome work. And again, you know, it's the power of God, the power of the Word.
Yeah, well, we're trying to engage people to be involved and get involved in the work of Bible translation. Right now, there's over 2,600 languages in progress. So that's amazing, but we have to keep bringing more people in so that we finish the task of getting the last 20% of the world having full access. And it's really amazing to see the impact over and over. I've been in this 30 years. I still see it over and over, the impact of the scriptures, the transformational nature of them.
Amen.
Good seeing you again, Alan. I always look forward to our conversations down at the Southwestern every year. So it's good seeing your face again. I miss those times. Yeah.
Me too. We had such big cutbacks in our budget over this last years. I've had to adapt to some major changes for myself. And right now it's basically getting these photos out and getting them better used. That's been my task right now. And we're using Libris, and we're trying to connect people up to the library to have that access. So that's what we're working on right now, until I can get out and create more material, right?
Right.
Any other questions or comments?
My last photo there was of the Papua New Guinea. I'd just like to say that in Papua New Guinea, 15% of the world's languages are basically exist. There's about over 800 languages in that one country alone. So it's quite phenomenal. I mean, that's where I started, and it's very, very visual. And that was my introduction to why I actually took up a camera. I went home frustrated because I tried to take pictures, and the camera was just a point and shoot. And at the end of it, never do that again. So anyways, thanks I really see a lot of faces and people. I really miss the Southwest Photojournalism Conference and the last few years. So hopefully I'll be able to get around again and connect it with some of you.
So for next week, I'm going to just ask 2 people that are on the call and see if anybody would help just share next week at 1 o'clock. I didn't know if Alan Kinsley, if you have time to help and just share some stuff. And then John Walton, would you be willing to do that as well?
Sure.
John said thumbs up. How about Alan?
There's a chance I'm actually maybe off next Friday. So I can think. I don't know, is this kind of like what's your normal thing? Obviously, this is my first time just to kind of
Yes.
share what your story is and that kind of stuff.
Yep, this is kind of it. And we just try to give everybody 5 to 10 minutes and give everybody a chance to kind of respond like you would around the table, enjoying food together, maybe.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I can try to do something. And if I can, I'll find out if I'm taking off next Friday or not. Hopefully by the end of the weekend. So I'll let you know.
If not, you can make Michael do it for us.
There you go. I'll do that. I may do that anyway, but you know. Sure.
Well, anything else anybody want to share in general? It doesn't have to be related to any topic. Anybody surviving this? Anybody learned something that they, through this COVID, that they didn't know about themselves before that's changed them?
Stanley.
Yeah,
Stanley, this is Gil Williams. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry. This is Gil Williams. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm having to walk my dog. I've been on the computer meeting since 10:30 this morning, so I'm on the phone outside. I would like you guys just to remember in prayer the missionaries. I talked to one of the people that Stanley had help down in Peru, and they're not actually at home. They're in Lima, and they've been there. I talked to them 3 weeks ago, and they've been there a month. And their Lima is shut down. I mean, they're literally military patrolling the streets, not letting people out. So I don't know. I need to call them back, but just keep folks in mind. And if you know anybody there, any of their supporters or churches, touch base with them and make sure they're keeping them in the prayers and maybe in their financial situation, because it's it's just tough on everybody. And I'll go mute again, but thank you guys. Enjoyed the work. Enjoyed listening to you guys.
Were you saying something, James?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I got a glimpse. You said, have we learned anything during this COVID? I think I can enjoy retirement. I got a glimpse of what it's like. And so pretty nice. It's going to be really tough to drive an hour each way commuting to work. I have the feeling there's going to be a lot of road rage going on. Not for me, but out there in general. So yeah, this has been it's been a blessing in one sense.
You know, James, you know what the best thing about retirement is? To be able to look at somebody and say, nah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, I think I'm at the opposite end. I'm pretty sure I know now that I don't want to retire because this pace is not suitable to my personality. So I miss being around my kids and my colleagues.
And Gary Chapman, I think, has discovered his babysitting skills. Is that what you've been doing? You're still muted.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't click. Yeah, that's one of the joys for sure. Plus, I get really good practice taking pictures of them, so it's a lot of fun. I don't post them anywhere, but it's a lot of fun.
Well, the definition of retirement is a new job description.
Well, it's been good to see all you guys. I'm looking forward. I'll send out a thing, and if you know of anybody who you like to join us or present to us, that'd be great to have them. This is actually the perfect size right here. It fills my screen perfectly, and everybody, I think, got a chance to say something. I don't want to get it so large that people don't participate, but I want you to feel like you were at the table and heard, not just that you came to the table and only listened. And we enjoyed each of you and sharing some of little tidbits, and looking forward to seeing you next week. Thank you, Allison, and thank you, Alan, especially for sharing.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, we'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Stay safe, everyone.
Bye-bye.